This is Chapter 17, Part 2. We're going to pick up where we left off by talking about how fossil fuel combustion adds to air pollution. Coal combustion releases carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, toxic metals, and particulates, and diesel fuel releases a lot of sulfur dioxide. Be sure you pause the video and add this to your notes. Air pollutants are monitored by the states and the EPA at the federal level. VOC is a general name for a volatile organic compound, things that have a strong smell, including gasoline and formaldehyde. They can be emitted by engines and industry, but even the pine odor from trees is considered to be a VOC. This is a little bit outdated, but it shows relative concentration of air pollutants emitted in the United States. The Clean Air Act has successfully reduced emissions from the criteria pollutants, although some of the provisions were rolled back late in the Trump administration. One of Biden's first executive orders was an attempt to restore some of the power of the Clean Air Act on his first day in office. Emissions have been reduced in a variety of ways, such as through the use of cleaner burning engines and catalytic converters. Sulfur dioxide has been reduced using clean coal, which is really a misnomer, but we're going to talk about that in our energy unit. Add this to your notes. Scrubbers are devices used to filter out air from industry before it's released. They can be wet or dry scrubbers, and take a close look at the diagram of this wet scrubber. The dirty air is injected into the scrubber, a fine mist sprays and knocks down the pollutants, and then they're trapped in the water. Those pollutants are taken away to hazardous waste disposal, and the cleaned air rises and is released, and the water is recirculated through the system. One more thing to add to your notes. Electrostatic precipitators are filtration devices that use an electrical charge to remove impurities as gases flow through them. They're used to remove waste particles at industrial facilities and electricity generating stations. Some air pollutants are toxic to humans and can cause a variety of health issues. The Clean Air Act helps to regulate and reduce these substances. Industrializing and developing nations are suffering from an increase in outdoor air pollution because while their industry is growing, their traditional fuels are still being used to heat their homes and to cook, things such as wood and charcoal. China has the world's worst air pollution, and many deaths result every year from it. Coal is the cause of 75% of the deaths in China. The Chinese government recognizes this air pollution problem, and they've started instilling stricter regulations, but the mass of pollution over China is called the Asian brown cloud. Rural air quality can also be an issue, especially from CAFOs, concentrated animal feedlot operations. The pollutants there can include dust, methane, hydrogen sulfide, and ammonia. People working and living nearby might really suffer from respiratory issues. This is one of the reasons why our local Tonganoxie community fought so hard to keep Tyson out a few years ago. Smog is formed when certain air pollutants mix under specific conditions. We're going to go through the details of smog formation in an upcoming sketch note session. There are going to be two types we talk about: industrial smog and photochemical smog. So more later about these. Smog can be reduced through the use of those catalytic converters on cars, better regulation over industry, vehicle inspections, which are not required in the state of Kansas, and incentive programs. Add this to your notes. One of the ways we can reduce smog is through the use of technology such as vapor recovery nozzles on gasoline pumps. Take a closer look next time you go pump gas. Add this to your notes. Catalytic converters are one way emissions from vehicles can be reduced, thus reducing smog. Let's talk about ozone depletion. We're talking about the good ozone layer, in this case, up high in the stratosphere. We're going to do a sketch note session so you can visualize this process. But in the meantime, just know that CFCs and halocarbons break down good ozone. And while many of those may be banned for manufacturing in the US now, they have those long residence times. So the ozone that suffers the most is the concentrated area over Antarctica. This has to do with meteorological conditions in that region, and the size of that hole was above average in 2020. Here's a more detailed explanation of why it forms where it does. It has to do with the polar vortex trapping those pollutants. The Montreal Protocol was an effort by the United Nations to reduce CFCs in response to the ozone crisis. And luckily, it was very successful. You can see how the production of CFCs was reduced over the years after the signing of the Montreal Protocol. And while the ozone hole is still there, it's not growing substantially, although it does vary a little bit from year to year depending on the conditions. Acid deposition is a term that includes acid rain, but it's more broad than that. It can also include acid snow, hail, or sleet, and it could also be dry deposition. Add this important info to your notes about where acid deposition takes place. Downwind from coal burning power plants, and then also, depending on where you live and the bedrock in your area, can actually help to neutralize acid rain effects. Burning fossil fuels can cause acid rain when SOx and NOx are released and combine with water to form sulfuric and nitric acids. We would call acid rain an example of a secondary pollutant. Acid deposition can impact nutrients in our topsoil, washing them out. It can pollute our water, kill aquatic organisms, damage our crops, and erode stone features. This quick overview shows you where acid rain is most likely to fall in our country. The Clean Air Act helps to regulate SOx emissions, and new scrubbers have helped with the problem, but it's still a major concern in developing nations such as China. Indoor air pollution can impact us even more than outdoor air pollution because we spend so much of our day indoors. In developing nations, indoor air pollution often comes from indoor fuel sources used for heating and cooking, such as charcoal and dung, burned with little ventilation. Health effects of indoor burning include asthma, pneumonia, lung cancer, bronchitis, allergies, and more. Cigarette smoke is a terrible indoor air pollutant, even when it's just secondhand. We've already talked about radon and how it causes lung cancer. And this map is just a reminder that you do live in a radon zone, so if you have a closed basement, it's a good idea to get your home tested. We've mentioned VOCs briefly before. This is a very diverse group of pollutants, but formaldehyde is a common one. This sticker that you see on the left is present throughout my parents' RV because of formaldehyde used in the paneling and other materials. We can be exposed to indoor air pollution because of other living things in our home, including pets, but also dust mites and mold. Sick building syndrome is a catch-all name for illness caused by indoor air pollution. For example, Miss Corson was complaining about the smell in her portable classroom last fall, and when she came back after one weekend when it had been kind of rainy and humid, her whole room had bloomed in a coat of green mold and it had to be shut down. Here are some ways we can reduce indoor air pollution. We can choose different materials, we can ventilate, limit exposure to toxicants, and use testing kits and carbon monoxide detectors. In developing countries, they can make sure they're using dry wood, cook outside, and use less polluting fuels, such as natural gas. There are many possible sources of indoor air pollution. One of the best things that you can do around your house is to open your windows every day, even when it's cold, just a little bit to allow some air exchange. So, in conclusion, that was a lot of information. Hang in there. We're going to spend some more time digging around and digesting material in this mega unit.